Welcome to another video about paradise. Today we are going to talk about Iceland, and if you haven't seen the single videos about Iceland yet, then I will link those as a playlist at the end. In this video we are going to talk about what to do in Iceland, some tips and tricks I accumulated during my own research about the island, and also my personal experiences from the trip. As a disclaimer, we spent about 17 days in Iceland, so we had a lot of time on our backs, so it was pretty easy to do more activities for shorter period of time. I have another tip as well. And also, maybe as a disclaimer, it's quite necessary to know the time we went. It was July, so it was summer and the warmer month. In winter the weather changes completely and you need to plan way different from the summer months. First thing we are going to talk about is the possible routes you could take. And there the time factor comes into play, because if you only have a short period of time, there's something called the Golden Circle, which starts in Reykjavik. Then you can do a 3 to 4 day long trip and come back to Reykjavik. By doing the Golden Circle, you can see a couple of really cool sites within a few days. So that's a really good option if you just have a shorter stay. The next option is to do the ring road. That is a road circling all around the island of Iceland, and that takes about 14 days. If you have more time, use it, because then you can go a little slower, have more stops in between, but 14 days should do the trick. A third option that might come into play are the highlands, so the inner parts of Iceland, and if you want to see those, you have to plan ahead as well, because you might need a four-wheel drive. And most of those roads are closed in wintertime, so you have to have that in mind as well. If you go in wintertime, you might not be able to go into the highlands, so check that out beforehand, if you can go, where you can go, and book your car accordingly. As a second part, I'm going to tell you a little bit about transportation and traffic, and I think the most important part about that is the car rental options you can do. We took a camper van where we slept in, and you can save a lot of money by renting a camper van and then buying the campground card, with which you can stand on a lot of different campgrounds. You're not allowed to wild camp in Iceland anymore, because a lot of tourists didn't treat nature very well, and so they had a law that forbids you to do that. Second option for doing the ring road would be to get a 4x4, and then you could do the highlands as well, but then you have to see where you could sleep. There are options with roof tents, or you take a normal tent. That is up to you, what you prefer. If you want to go into the highlands, you have to have the 4x4, so that's mandatory. For the Golden Circle, you could also book tours where you go by bus, or especially when you go from Reykjavik, you could do day tours, and that would be another option. The traffic in Iceland really depends on where you are, and as a rule of thumb, the further you get away from Reykjavik, the slower and the more quiet the traffic gets. So if you are on the northeastern side of the island, you will barely see anyone anywhere, and that is sometimes really fun. You can drive for a long time without seeing anyone at all. Also quite important, the further you drive out, the less common gas stations get. So at some points you really have to plan ahead, or you always have to fill the car up to the max to not run out of fuel, because that's not what you want. If there is no traffic, then there's no one and there's no gas station nearby. So always be mindful of that. The options to get to Iceland are basically down to flying, and you're going to arrive in Reykjavik at the Keflavik airport, which is a little bit outside of town, and then you can take a bus into town that just departs right out of the gate. Next thing I want to talk about is food. You could go out for dinner, or you could cook for yourself, and the later is the one I would suggest, because food is quite expensive in Iceland. We were told that Bonus and Netto are the cheapest supermarkets on the island, and they have a variety of foods you could get. And our camper van had only a gas stove to cook outside. If you take a more high-end van or mobile home, you will have a full-on kitchen. Expect to pay more for food than you are used to. Like in most countries, for accommodation you can choose between Airbnbs, hotels or hostels, but also for my feeling and how I want to visit a country like Iceland or Scandinavian countries, I would always prefer camper van or roof tent and stuff like that. And that is also the cheapest and most handy option, because you have it all in one. Icelandic people are really friendly as far as we experienced it, but to be fair, we didn't meet too many people at all. Like if you're in Reykjavik, for sure, there are a lot of people, and on some of the campgrounds there are more people. But as soon as you get out, there are really few people. Even on the most visited sites, it is quite alright. There are not too many people. Always depends a little on what time of day you go there and what time of year. Like I said, we were there in July, but compared to other countries and compared to other sites that are that beautiful, big and epic, I think Iceland is a really good choice for having a lot of space for your own. And especially if you go out hiking and go for longer hikes, it is quite common that you won't see any people for hours at all. And I really like that. The next point I always include are beaches, activities and sites. There are some beaches to see. The Black Sand Beach in Vik í Mýrdal is a really nice one, but I wouldn't really recommend to go into the water even in July. That would be a little cold. I went in for a dip in Reykjavik with 9 degrees Celsius. I wouldn't really recommend that. You could combine it with the hot springs, because those are activities you could do for free in a lot of places, and then get from the hot tub into the cold water of the ocean. That is quite fun, near to a sauna experience, but apart from that, I wouldn't really recommend going swimming. One thing we didn't do was the Silfra, but I'm going to talk about that a little later. And I think one of the main things to do in Iceland is hiking, for sure. There are so many beautiful landscapes, and to really experience those, you have to get out of the car and get into nature, and don't just watch them from off the road, but be inside that very landscape. While editing this video, I just realized there were two really important things missing. First one is the subscribe button down there, and you should push that right now if you haven't already. And if you're down there already, maybe click the like button as well. That really helps and I appreciate it a lot. The second and maybe even more important thing is the Aurora Borealis, also known as the Northern Lights, which are these crazy looking greenish sky photos you see all over the place, because Iceland is the best place in the world to see those. Unfortunately, we happened to be in Iceland in July. That was really good for the weather and for the temperatures, but it's a really bad time for seeing the Northern Lights as it gets barely dark at night. So if you go there later, and by later I mean late August to mid-April, you might be able to see them. The later you go, the higher the chances are, because it gets dark really early and it stays dark for a long time. I really look forward to see the Northern Lights one day, and I really hope to go back to Iceland in wintertime, not only for the Northern Lights but also for ice caves and stuff like that. That is also missing in the video, as we went in summertime and you can't go in most of the glacier caves. So that is for another time and another video. Until then, we continue with this video. Subscribe and like. Thank you. I appreciate it a lot. For the weather forecast, I might not be the best person to ask, but there are some really good websites to check out to see, especially if you take those sites showing the clouds and how they move over the island. That might give you a quite good idea of what to expect. But in general, Iceland is far up north, so it's a little cooler. Like I said, we were there in July, so it was summer, but still the highest was like 15 degrees Celsius, maybe 17. So pack accordingly. I was really happy about having some sweaters, having a rainproof jacket that was really handy. So my hat was really helpful for the rainy days, and it was quite windy as well. So have a really good jacket that is wind and waterproof. That will help a lot. Have good shoes, because your feet might get wet on the hikes. So if you have good shoes and good socks, that will really help. If we talk about snorkeling and diving, Iceland only have one real site to offer, and that is the Silfra Rift, which is a ridge between the American and the European continent. And there you have really cold, but also really clear water that you can book a snorkel or a dive trip through, and then you can dive or snorkel through those plates. And it's supposed to be a really cool experience, but it's not cheap, so we decided not to do it. And last but certainly not least is the wildlife. And Iceland is quite rich in wildlife, even if you can't tell by first sight. There are the puffins, and that's a really cool experience. There are different spots to find them. We didn't. We have been to, I think, at least 3 or 4 different places to see them. In a week we managed to see them, but we were a little further away, and then we were circling the whole ring road and managed to see them in the western fjords. And there was a really cool cliff where we could see them, and where they always tried to land on the cliff, and there were nests and cute puffin couples, and that was a really nice experience. I loved taking photos of them, especially when you're a photographer. You should go there because that's a lot of fun, because sometimes they just hang in the air before finding the right spot to land on, and then you can take a picture while they're like hovering there. In the ocean there are the seals, there are the whales that you could watch, so that's really cool. And on land, depending on when you go there, there are a lot of wild horses. They are really cool to see, and especially when you go into the highlands, there are like Nordic or Arctic foxes, there are reindeers, so there's more wildlife in Iceland than you would expect. Those were some general ideas about Iceland and my experiences. If you have more ideas or places you would recommend, maybe put them in the comments down below so that other viewers may be inspired by that. I would also recommend checking out the highlights on Google. That helps me a lot with planning, and see which of those you like, because I really think that always depends on your taste, and also it depends on what you prefer, and if you want to be more adventurous, or if you really like to chill out and stuff like that, and also on your time budget. If you have more time, I would really recommend do the whole tour, and especially go into the fjords and the peninsulas as well. There is a Snæfellsnes Peninsula. I would really recommend to go there if you have the time. That is also another recommendation. If you just go from Reykjavik, maybe do the Golden Circle and extend that to these peninsula or into the western fjords. There are different options to just expand the route by a little. If you have more than 4 or 5 days, if you maybe have a week, or maybe if you have 2 weeks and don't want to do the whole ring tour, you can extend into the fjords and the Snæfellsnes Peninsula. Also, if you have questions about Iceland, put them in the comments as well. I would try to answer them the best I could. I've put a lot of time into my plannings for Iceland, but as I said, they were really specific to my needs and my wishes. But also I have more infos in the back of my head. I can't put them all into this video. So maybe the comment section is a better place to be more specific for your needs, your ideas and your wishes. There's going to be one last Iceland video on this channel, and that is going to be the short video I did with my brother in Iceland. And it is a tribute to Iceland, but also it is a tribute to the movie The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. If you have seen that, I think you might really enjoy the short film as well. Make sure to hit the subscribe button so you will not miss out on that opportunity. I really appreciate that. I also am really happy about every like, and if you share this video with other curious Iceland fans or adventurers to be. And now, without further ado, I present this one, because that is the subscribe button. I also present these nice videos, and now there's a sneak peek. Let's go!